The Light in the Window by Robert Walsh. It was written in December of, well, I copied it December of 1994. But the book cover is printed by Timothy Robert Walsh on December 1994. The drawings within were done by Colleen Marie Walsh in December of 1994. And the original story was written as an English class assignment at Purdue University in December of 1957. The book is dedicated to our family, to Shirley, my wonderful wife, and mother of our children, and to our children who came as special gifts to Shirley and I. Therese, Tim, Tom, Amy, Colleen, Patty, and Jamie. The Light in the Window by Robert Walsh. It was a typical December night in northern Montana. Cold, snowy, and topped off by a howling wind which seemed to find joy in swirling the snow before its advancing turbulent force. Tom Stewart knew these winters well. He had been through 57 of them in the North Country and had found early in his youth that the best place to be on such a night was in front of a warm fire with a stomach full of food and his pipe nearby. And this is exactly where he was. He and his only true friend, Old Buck. Yes, sir, Old Buck, said Tom as he rocked back and forth in his creaky rocking chair. You're the best darn hunting dog in these parts, aren't you, boy? With that, Buck slowly opened his eyes from his position in front of the fireplace and gallantly wagged his tail as if to agree wholeheartedly with his master. He then closed his eyes and went right back to sleep again. He was taking advantage of this well-deserved rest, for it was only been about 3 hours earlier that he and his master had been out in the woods behind the cabin protecting 2 young bear cubs from a pack of hungry wolves which had attacked them. The mother bear had been caught in a trap and then finally killed by the wolves, and they were all ready to attack the cubs when Tom and Old Buck had come by. Now, however, the cubs were safe out in his shed where Tom had left them with some food and straw. Yes, Old Buck had had a hard day of it, and now he was reaping the rewards of a job well done. He then closed his eyes and went right back to sleep again. Oops. Tom was taking full advantage of the fire too, just sitting there rocking back and forth, half dozing, half nodding, yet wrestling with a few thoughts which passed through his mind. You see, Tom had in the past few weeks become very lonely. He had been a bachelor all his life. In fact, he had never really become close friends with anyone, except of course Old Buck. Yet now, for some reason, he had fallen into this lonely mood. Maybe it was the idea that he was getting older and needed more companionship than Old Buck could offer. Or maybe it was because it was Christmas Eve. Although he had never become too excited over Christmas before. Not since the days of his childhood, anyway. However, it must have been a combination of both of these. For why else would he have spent so much time selecting, chopping, and decorating the Christmas tree in the corner? Why else would he buy such a thing as a Christmas wreath with a candle in it for his one window in his cabin, when only he and Old Buck would share the warm light from its dancing flame? All of these things passed through Tom's mind, and with every thought he seemed to feel lonelier and lonelier. Outside, the wind still howled, and the snow was thrown all about by the ever-increasing force of the wind. Yet hour after hour, Tom just sat there and thinking, rocking and thinking. Then suddenly, as Tom was just about to doze off in his chair, there came a loud thumping at the door. Old Buck jerked his head up, looked at the door for an instant, then turned and looked at Tom, as if to say, was that the wind or just those 2 bear cubs making that noise? Then it came again, and Tom jumped up, darted to the door, and flung it open. At the same time, a gust of wind unleashed a torrent of snow through the door, yet Tom could see 4 figures standing there in the night. He motioned them inside, and as they came stomping in, he saw that they were Indians, 2 adults and 2 shivering children. He again motioned towards the fireplace, and the 2 youngsters darted close to it, followed by the man and woman. Finally, after a few moments of absorbing the glowing warmth from the fire, the man spoke and told Tom how he and his family had been forced to seek shelter during the raging storm. They had started out in the afternoon for the village to pick up food and supplies, but he had been forced to seek shelter from the blinding snow. They found temporary relief in an abandoned cattle stall, but soon the children got too cold, and they had to find more protection. Soon after, they saw the light in the window. Tom was very delighted that he could be of help. Ordinarily, he would have acted in his usual, rather unfriendly attitude, but now, for some reason, he wanted to do all that he could to help these unfortunate people. Even old Buck seemed pleased with the company, and the children found him very friendly and playful. It wasn't long before Tom had some soup simmering over the fire, the pheasant warmed up, and everyone feeling warm and contented. The children looked at the 3 admiringly, but wondered what it was for, and before he really realized what he was doing, Tom found himself telling the children all about Christmas and the birth of Christ, just as he had learned about it so many years before. He even brought out the bear cubs for the children to play with, and soon they were having a merry time on the floor. Time passed, and as they talked, the wind gradually subsided. Finally, the man thanked Tom for his help and kindness, and although Tom wanted them to stay longer, they decided that they had better go back home. Then Tom gave them some meat and grain to take with them, and he told the children that they could have the bear cubs as their very first Christmas gifts. Then the family left, each one knowing that he had found a true friend in their chance meeting. As Tom closed the door and walked over to the fireplace, he was filled with a very warm and pleasant feeling of thankfulness. He was thankful for the brief but happy hours they had spent together, for the joy in the faces of the children as he gave them the cubs, and for the gratitude expressed by the family for his help and friendship. For these few hours, his loneliness had disappeared, and he had relived the excitement he had experienced so many years ago as a boy. As he went to bed, he couldn't help but notice how quickly his loneliness had disappeared, and how in its place the feeling of peace and contentment reigned.
That's good. Is that the end?
Yeah, that's the end.
The end.
That always came to mind, almost brings a tear to my eye, thinking of those little kids and the bear cubs.
Yeah.